Hi everyone, this is Rick Morgan. I'm the director at the Stifel Fine Arts Center, and what I'm going to do is show you a series of videos that are going to be working on a pottery wheel. Each video will have a separate skill or a separate technique that I'm going to show, so I hope you enjoy. Thanks. This video I'm going to focus on how to center a piece of clay onto the wheel, and after it has been centered, how to open it, and then how to pull the walls to make a cylinder. So first thing is, I'm starting off with a piece of clay that's about 1.5 pounds. So when you're starting off, it's good to start off with a smaller piece of clay. It makes it a little bit more manageable to be able to handle the clay, especially if you're a first-time thrower. There are usually rings on the wheel. You want to make sure that you try to get the piece of clay to be in the center of the wheel as close as you can, using those rings to help you guide your way into the center. If you're over here, you're way off, so try to get it close to the center. Once you get it and you're lining up, you have to hit it down with some force. So I palm my piece of clay, set it over to the top, and then smack it down on there. Then I want to look at the rings to see how close did I get it. So I'm a little far off here, a little bit over here. So what I'm going to do is just lightly pull this clay back towards the center to try to get it as lined up in the center as possible. You can smack it down on there. Make sure that you kind of get it as close to the center as possible. And then now we can go ahead and start the wheel. So whenever I'm centering a piece of clay, I want to go to a medium to fast speed. So depending on how comfortable you feel, this is going as full speed, which I feel like sometimes is a little out of control, especially for a beginner. So I like to retract my speed back a little bit so that it's a little bit slower. As it's a little bit slower, I can kind of feel where I'm at. I don't want to go so slow like this to try to center the clay because it's very hard to make even pressure as the wheel spins around one turn. So I want to go to this medium to fast speed. I get the speed on my wheel. I take my foot off the pedal so that speed remains the same. Add some water to my hands, add some water to the clay, and just want to feel the clay slide through my hands. I'm not squeezing or adding any pressure. It's just kind of let my hands rest on there and letting that clay slide around in my hands. Now, what I want you to think about is your posture. These wheels are created so that there's a nice curve that you can wrap your legs around there. So you want to get nice and close to the wheel, get it to where your arm, my left arm, is bent almost at a 90 degree, and most of my pressure is going to be here at the heel of my hand. I'm going to let my clay just spin around in there, and then what I want to do is apply pressure by pushing this hand into the clay. At the same time I'm pushing in, my right hand, I'm using my fingers, and they are going to retract back towards this thumb. So this is, I want to feel like a steady wall that pushes forward, and once it pushes forward, it should straighten the clay up. And at the same time, once that wall is pushed in there, I want to slowly start applying some pressure with these fingers to make that clay come up into a cone shape, all right? So my hands are right over here. I slowly start applying pressure into that clay, at the same time squeezing it back with my fingers and working my way up and up and up and up and up towards my thumb. If you notice, I try to keep my thumb straight up in the air so that clay can ride up that thumb. Start back down here at the bottom again, adding just enough pressure where it pushes firmly onto that clay, and then I'm slowly squeezing my fingers back here towards this left thumb, and then I ease off the pressure. That brings us up into a cone shape. Once you have that, you need to force the cone back down. Now when you do that, a lot of people feel like they should just push straight down on there. That's not good because you'll get a mushroom cap. So what you want to try to do is I like to let my pinky rest over the center of the clay, and then I just relax my wrist so that my hand falls down onto the side. Because what I really want to be doing is pushing here with the palm of my hand, not up here with my pinkies. So letting my finger rest across the top and then applying pressure right here to my hand. When I slowly start pushing on the side of that clay, you'll feel it start to fall down. So as I lightly put that pressure on there, that clay will slowly ease itself down to the wheel. So all the pressure was right here, not up on the top. So if I pushed on the top, like I said, you'd get that mushroom shape. So now that I've got it down once, you can see that it's pretty close to being in the center. It's not really wobbly or anything, but I'm gonna do it again one more time, and I'm gonna go a little bit quicker this time. So once again, using the heel of my hand, Slowly apply pressure into that clay. At the same time, squeeze that clay back here towards my steady hand, my steady left hand, working that clay up and up and up and up and up towards the top. Ease off the pressure, take my right hand over the top, relax my wrist, and then I slowly start pushing on the side of that clay. And you'll feel that clay slowly fall down, fall down, fall down, and then you can ease your hands off of it. Now this clay is centered, I want to open it up. So other people have used thumbs, different fingers. I like to make a peace sign with my hand, and I use my middle finger to rest in there to make that dimple into the clay, add a little bit of water to it, and now using my left hand, I move my peace sign, I move this index finger either this way or back here so that I can drive my finger down into the center of the clay. So as I'm pushing down, I'm angling my finger so that the clay goes down into an angle, so it pushes it wide open this way. So once I get close to the bottom, I ease off the pressure and relax. And I want to make sure that I leave enough clay down there that I have some clay on the bottom, but not so much that it's so thick that I have a very heavy bottom. So once I get to that, I'm going to squeeze my two fingers together. I retract them back a little bit so that it rests on the bottom. I'm trying to make even pressure, and this is going to create my base. So I let my fingers rest over here. Once again, I like to use my left hand, slowly pull back towards me, and as I stretch this clay out, you'll see the bottom get wider and wider. All right. Once I've done that, I want to use the pads of my fingers, and I slowly push in towards the center, and then back out here towards this outer edge. By doing this, you're kind of compressing the bottom, which will also help eliminate any stress cracks that might happen as you basically open the clay and ripped it apart. You want to relieve that stress, and by doing that is just lightly pushing your fingers into the clay, just enough to where it almost makes a little spiral. And doing that back and forth several times will help realign those clay particles so that whenever the clay shrinks, it doesn't have a crack. All right? So once I've got this, now I'm ready to make this get a little bit taller. I like to use a sponge, add some water to it. And now, because I'm bringing the walls up, I want to slow my wheel down a little bit. So I'm slowing the wheel down to a slower speed to where I feel like I have a little bit more control. And as I'm doing this, I'm using my fingers, and I like to lock my hands or just have my hands touch one another. Whenever they work independently, it feels like it's tough to make a central contact point. So having your hands touch and then your fingers out here, this will help bring the clay up a little bit more evenly. So to make a cylinder, my inside hand really is not adding much pressure at all, just letting the clay spin around on its fingers. Most of the pressure is going to come from my outside, pushing into these fingers and then working their way up. So once again, I'm starting here at the bottom. This hand's very light with the pressure. This one slowly pushes into the clay. As that clay starts to move, I want to slowly follow that movement up and up and up and up and up towards the top, and then I ease my fingers up off there. So I'm really compressing that clay and making it go into a taller cylinder rather than going out really wide. Each time I like to add a little bit of water to the clay so that it stays nice and slick the whole way up. And you'll notice that it's going to be thinner here, and then it starts to get thicker as it comes down here at the bottom. So what you want to do each pull is stay at the bottom a little bit longer as you're applying some pressure and then slowly working your way up. So this time I'm coming down here at the bottom, slowly pushing in, pushing in, pushing in, pushing in, and now I slowly start working my way up and up and up and up. And as I get up here to the top, I ease off the pressure so my fingers are barely touching and just glide right up off there. So you can see each pull that I've done, I've made the clay get a little bit taller. I've also made it get a little bit thinner. Now, I usually stop adding pressure probably about maybe right here, because if I kept on pinching, the clay would get thinner and thinner, and that's when it gets so weak that it falls over. So you have to be able to control that pressure of how much to push at the bottom and then how to be able to ease off as you work your way up to the top. All right, so I'm going to do one more pull just to make sure I get all of that clay on the bottom. And usually when I'm pinching the clay, I'm using my ring finger and my middle finger to kind of really apply that pressure. My index finger really isn't doing much, and the same thing on the inside. So once I get down here, because it's getting a little bit taller, my hand has to go all the way down here. slowly apply some pressure at the bottom to get that clay to start moving. And once it starts to move, I'm slowly working my way up and up and up. And right up here, I'm kind of almost quitting with the pressure, but just continuing with the movement up and up and up and up towards the top, and let my fingers relax up off of there. All right? So now there's a couple things that we can do once you get a cylinder like this. One is we can use some tools to help straighten things up. So if you notice, I'm just using my sponge, kind of cleaning up the edges, and I just kind of lightly take the sponge, squeeze out all the water, and then hold it on there, and it kind of helps clean that up. We also have a couple other tools, which are called ribs, and I have two kinds. This is a wooden rib that I could come over and I can hold this rib straight down onto the edge of the wheel and then onto the side of the pot. And then what I can do is run my finger, my inside finger, up along this edge, and that'll help straighten this clay up here a little bit more. So I'm gonna come over and just lightly push that right up to the edge of the rib, and as I work my way up and towards the top, you can see it'll start to make this clay a little bit more straight up and down like a cylinder, all right? I also have a metal rib that I can use. Metal ribs has a little bit more of a sharper edge, and it'll really help scrape off any slip or really smooths out any imperfections that might be on the clay. So I can kind of use this rib to really hold this on here, lightly pressing it on there just enough to where it scrapes off some of that slip and helps kind of smooth everything out here like that, all right? Once I'm finished with this in this cylinder, if I like it, I like to kind of just run my fingers across the top so it's not a sharp edge up here. And so I can kind of finish this off just by cutting some clay, but making sure that I get any water that might be in the inside of this cup. So I'll take my sponge, squeeze out all the water, kind of go down here at the bottom, absorb any moisture that might be at the bottom, kind of mop up any water down there, squeeze that out. And if you have to do it a second time, make sure you get it all out of there, all right? Last thing is I need to get this off of the wheel. So there's a couple things that I like to do. One, you can use a wooden knife. It can help you trim off some of that extra clay that might be on the bottom. So I just use it as like I'd hold a pencil, let it rest on the side of the clay, and then I can slowly start pushing this down, 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 and I even taper it in a little bit, just to make it kind of give an undercut underneath that clay. And I can slow my wheel down, and then I can come over here and I can scrape off that extra clay that I've just eliminated off of the wheel, all right? So that way it saves me from having to do a lot of trimming after the fact. There's another tool that you can also use that does the same thing. It's just a metal tool so that sometimes when that's scraping onto the wheel, it's not the most pleasant sound. But you can also come over, undercut using this tool to cut out some of that clay, or even trim up onto the side of the pot to smooth things out this way too, all right? So once you get your bottom relatively clean, we need to get this off of the wheel. A couple things that you can do. Well, one important thing you have to do is add water. And then we have a wire cutter that we're gonna use. So add some water to the wheel, create a nice little puddle on here, grab the wire. I like to pull the wire really tight to my left hand and then wrap it around my right hand so that I feel like I got a good grip. I make sure that I force the wire down onto the wheel nice and firm, pulling it back nice and tight, and then drag it all the way through. That water helps that clay release off of the wheel. You can try to use your fingers to slide it off there and pick it up, but we also have pot lifters that you can use. And the pot lifters just need to be creeped up right along the edge here. You don't have to smash it all the way to the back. So if I wiggle it underneath one side and come over here and wiggle it underneath the other side, I should be able to spin it around and the clay should easily move across the wheel. If it doesn't do that, pull your lifters out, add some water, and recut it a second time. But this one is sliding off nice and easily. I can pick this up with my pot lifters. You can see it doesn't really alter the shape too much. And then I set it onto my board, release the pot lifters off of there. Sometimes they want to get stuck on there, and if that's the case, what you want to do is you can come over, wiggle it off here, and then I just slide my finger on one side and then wiggle it back out of the way, all right? Put it onto a wear board like this is nice because now I can transport my piece of pottery around, let it dry. Once it gets dry enough, then I can handle it, all right? Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully this will give you some insight of how I center a piece of clay, and hopefully it'll make it a little bit easier for you to continue to try to hone your skills at centering a piece of clay and pulling a tall cylinder. Thanks.